Benchmark, the voice of business. Presented by LMD.
On this week's edition of Benchmark, our top story today focuses on the latest issue of the LMD 50, Sri Lanka's version of the Fortune 500. Then in our feature segment, we turn the spotlight on Ajith Fernando, Managing Director and CEO of Capital Alliance, for his thoughts on the stock market. And we wrap up this edition with a look at the top 5 entities gracing the LMD 50 leaderboard. That's the lineup for Benchmark this week. Hello and welcome to Benchmark. I'm Savitri Rodrigo. On this week's show, we take a look at what's inside this year's edition of the LMD 50, the pioneering annual ranking of the nation's leading listed companies. First published in 1994 as the first of its kind in the country, the LMD 50 is now firmly established as Sri Lanka's version of the Fortune 500. Its role of corporate honor is based on the belief that meaningful comparisons of diverse entities can only be made by analyzing their respective revenue streams. The LMD 50 is compiled with information contained in the annual reports of listed companies with the principal rankings based on turnover. The year 2010-11 will also be remembered as the year in which there was a return of the old guard. The darling of the boss for oh so long, John Keells Holdings, called the shots from when the pioneering rankings were inaugurated in 1993-94 until 2002-03. With the exception of 2 years in the middle of what was a record run when another highly regarded conglomerate, Hayleys, ruled the roost. New listings in the form of Sri Lanka Telecom, followed by the Indian oil giant Lanka IOC, took their places on the podium in the 7 years that followed, only to be dethroned by JKH and Hayleys in that order this year. JKH deserves a special mention. It crossed the finish line with ease and ended the year with revenue in excess of a record 60 billion rupees. It was also by far the most valuable company on the Colombo Stock Exchange at 31st March 2011, with a market capitalization closing on 180 billion rupees. And it was only second to Bukit Dara in the profitability rankings with a bottom line of 9 billion rupees. Kudos to JKH Chairman Susantha Ratnayake, who has steered his ship out of the troubled waters that it found itself in some 3 years ago, when a Supreme Court ruling boiled over into nullifying its acquisition of Lanka Marine Services. JKH relinquished its claim to the gold standard a year later when its hold on the most respected crown was temporarily discontinued. JKH's track is certainly extraordinary. The big picture portrays the success stories of 2010-11. Only 6 of the 50 corporations that graced the LMD 50 reported lower incomes than in the previous year. Intriguingly, they were without exception from within the ranks of the banking sector. There were no losses in 2010-11, and the sole loss maker from a year ago, Dialog Axiata, returned to the black with a bang and a bottom line of more than 5 billion rupees to show for the noise it made at 12.2 billion rupees. Its 2009-10 loss was the highest on record for an LMD 50 company. 8 entities enjoyed post-tax profits in excess of 5 billion rupees, whilst as many as 39 LMD 50 companies are now recording annual revenue of 10 billion rupees or more. Turn the clock back to 1993-94 when the LMD 50 was first compiled. At the time, JKH's consolidated turnover of 4 billion rupees put it in first place in the rankings, whereas Janashakti Insurance's 6.8 billion rupee income in 2010-11 enabled it to make the cut at number 50. The cumulative income of the top 50 was less than 70 billion rupees, whereas in 2010-11 the aggregate stands at over 1,000 billion rupees, and total assets were valued at 131 billion rupees versus nearly 2,500 billion rupees in the year under review. On the other hand, 203 corporations were listed on the stock exchange 18 years ago, and this number has only grown to 246 at the end of financial year 2010-11. We go in for a short break now. When we return, we have an exclusive interview with the Managing Director and CEO of Capital Alliance, Ajith Fernando.